Welcome everybody back to Segal Talks here at the Martin Segal Theater Center at the Graduate Center CUNY. My name is Frank Henschke. I'm the director of the center, and this is the penultimate talk for this week and for our series. After 4 months, we have been traveling around the planet, but also to New York and Americas to hear voices of artists, of theater artists, performance artists, and how they experience this moment, this time of Corona, where we are all faced with existential questions, situations, and it's a dangerous time. But it's different everywhere in the world. And as we learned from all our talks, it's lots we have in common. We are all connected, but also individual experiences are different. And also answers and solutions found for the theater performing arts are different. America still is in a disastrous place. Over 150,000 dead people, most probably 40, 50 million people with infections. It's 10 times more than the testing, 10, 13, 14 times more than the testing suggests. And of course, the leadership that we feel is not able to address, to help, to protect people actually causing deaths. That's what we think these policies are murderous for some people, and the disenfranchised communities who have not been in the center, they are suffering. African Americans are twice as likely to die from infections because of the long discrimination and it's a hard time. Theaters are closing, small places are closing, nothing is open in New York City. Restaurants, you can't go inside. If you go through Midtown, where our graduate center is, every second store is empty, sold out. It's barricaded even still. It's a bit apocalyptic almost. But we all hope that the election perhaps will bring a change. But as much as we complain in the US here, which New York was the epicenter at the moment for a moment in the entire planet Earth. It moved on to Florida and California. But there are places in the world that have been struggling with civil war, with social injustices, with discrimination, and for a much longer time, where the corona is just perhaps one of many things. They go through one of those places, is Lebanon and the great city of Beirut. I was there two years ago, I think, and I liked it very much. And the spirit of it was the American University in Beirut with Sahar Asaf and her team. And so this is a place that matters, that is important. This great artist, a vibrancy, a city that came back from a civil war on the green line that divided the city. And we need to hear from the Middle East and next to Tunisia, what I would say, Beirut truly is an open city, and it's still so complicated what is happening there. And I can only imagine what the Corona crisis put out after the December uprising, and now this incredible, complicated financial disaster situation. So we have with us two artists, two theater artists, significant ones that are really at the front lines. It's Dima Mikhayel Matta and Yara Bou Nassar. So welcome, and thank you for taking the time to join us.
Hi, thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, so I will just say a little bit about both of you, and then we go in. Dima is a writer, actress, and a lecturer at a university for creative writing in English, a Fulbright scholar. It's a great thing, and Fulbright has been so much good in the world. And she studied at Rutgers University in creative writing, and she founded Cliffhangers in 2014, a bilingual storytelling platform in Beirut, taking on a very old tradition and redefining it with new ideas, new technology, and new dramaturgical interventions. Um, Her first play, this is not a memorized script. This is a well-rehearsed story. The Shubbak Festival had some readings in New York, and actually was open, we have to talk about it, in February 2020, shortly before the Corona crisis there in Beirut. Working on her play, Yara is a Lebanese performer, writer, and director, a theater maker, and she's interested in inspecting her identity with respect to the collective memory and the paradoxical binaries of her society. And she approaches themes that often focus on the deconstruction of social stereotypes and daily behavior in urban contexts like Beirut. as well as the private and intimate space where you in your apartment or in our personal relationship. So she got selected for a 3-month residency at La Cité, internationale. She's developing a new work, The Misadventure of a Hypothetical French Woman, and following her family in questions belonging to timing and decision-making process. And she is part of a collective that's developing a new work with the Theater Neumarkt in Zurich and Station Beirut. And I think we said it will premiere in April 2020. So I don't think that really happened. So anyway, you guys, I hope you will forgive me my introduction. Really, this is about listening to you. Where are you and what time is it? Dima, maybe you start.
Well, I'm in Beirut. I'm in my apartment, and it's 7 p.m. here. And yeah, and the sun is about to set, so I'm participating in the talk, and I will witness the sunset soon behind you.
Good. So if it gets dark, we had once a talk, I think it was from the Palestine and Jerusalem. It got so dark in the room, so we had to put some light on, but it worked. So I hope you will be in the light and enlighten us. What neighborhood are you in Beirut?
Ashrafiyeh, which literally means the place that looks out on the other places. It's a small hill in Beirut.
Oh, so you're up towards the hill, so you look down and you see the ocean and
yeah,
the city. Oh, wonderful! Yeah, wonderful. And Yara, where are you?
Well, I'm 10 minutes away from Dima. It's also 7 p.m. I'm also in my apartment. I prepared the light.
Good. And
yeah.
Neighborhood were you in?
I'm next to the museum, so I'm down by the museum Mathaf. So it's the end of Ashrafiyeh, beginning of Mathaf.
Fantastic. Yeah. The museum where the director saved lots of the sculptures in the Civil War by putting concrete around them, right? And the classical work. And, sharpshooter, still you see the impact of bullets on mosaics, these thousands of years old mosaics. Yeah, quite a place where you are. So how are you guys experience this moment? What is going on in Beirut?
Yara, would you start?
Yeah, I mean, I can. Okay, so I was actually in Zurich after. I would like actually to mention the play because we worked on the play in February, and Dima and I directed the play, and we had been working for months. And then the revolution started in October, so we postponed the play from November to February, which now seems like really a long time ago, but it's not. So, and then after that, I actually went to Zurich to work on the play, the performance you just mentioned. That was, of course, postponed, but it came out as a form of publication. For the moment. And I recently came back to Beirut. So I've been here now for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And it has been very weird to witness the pandemic and the economic collapse that is happening and all the political frustration that we're witnessing from far. And from the blissful town of Zurich, where everything is very calm and beautiful, and the public space is very there for us to enjoy, even during a pandemic. So it was really weird for me. And now I'm in transition actually, because I will be moving for a while to Zurich to join the ensemble of Theater Neumarkt. So yeah, it feels very weird to be suspended in this moment in Beirut. And I don't know what to feel so much, but it definitely has changed massively in the 4 months when I've been away. It's also apocalyptic actually, and sad, but yeah. I think for now I can pass the conversation to Dima and then.
Well, so as Yara said, we premiered the play in February, And then 2 weeks later, the lockdown began. And so it was very strange because it kind of went from a week before that we had a party, we were at a bar celebrating the things we had accomplished and the play and all of that, and suddenly 2 weeks later there was suddenly nothing, right? Everything closed. We were told to stay at home. Only supermarkets, bakeries, and pharmacies were open. And suddenly there's this kind of alternate reality that began for us, where we all learned how to cook, and we all stayed at home, constantly reading about the pandemic, constantly checking the numbers of people who were infected, the number of people who passed away. Always reading all these articles. Okay, now wear a mask. Now actually it's saying maybe the mask is not enough. Wash your hands. Actually, it's not the surfaces. It's some, right? So all these contradictory articles that kept coming up, and we were just taking in so much information that we were all just like balls of anxiety. And meanwhile, in parallel, the country was sinking in a massive economic collapse. The Lebanese pound lost so much value. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, a dollar was 1,500 Lebanese pounds, and now it's fluctuating, but it's around 8,000 Lebanese pounds.
Yeah, almost a tenth of what it was. Instead of having a dollar, you have 10 cents almost. Yeah.
Actually, I have to say something also, the contradiction that happened from being in the street for months and months and months and occupying public spaces again and everything. For me, when I came back and went out the first time and saw the downtown and all the streets empty, it was like it was never there. This was very, very intense to see. And I think the pandemic has been a gift to the government, actually, because it gave them room to silence the people again, or at least to try to silence the people again, and to really get comfortable and spread all their oppression. So,
yeah, I don't know how much people do know, but if I understand right, in December, everybody was on the street day after day. Sahar, I think she once called from while being on the demonstration, says really the entire city was involved, and it was not one or two or a small something. It was a really a massive showing, as what Monsieur, the philosopher who was with us on Monday, said, that people like artists on the streets who imagine a different life, who want to see a different model of the world, who think things can be better, and they went out to protest, to demand a share, a fairer share. So it was a massive, I think, event. So was it an uprising? Was it a revolution? What do you guys think?
It's a revolution for sure. It started on October 17th. And I don't think revolutions end, right? It's not because right now we're not in millions in the streets. It doesn't mean that we're not in a state of revolution. But yes, for about 3 months, we were in the streets every day. We were blocking roads. We were protesting. There were about 2 million people in the street, and we're only about 6 million people in the entire country. So 2 million of us in the streets, demanding our rights, demanding that something change, for something to change. Everybody was tired. Everybody was exhausted. We were angry. We've spent years and years, our parents spent years and years of just the same problems. Nothing had been solved. The same people who were the warlords are now in government, and they're the same. And so I think on October 17th, people really just kind of collectively decided it's enough. And so, as Yara was saying, this was our reality for 3 months, and then suddenly, there's the pandemic, and going back to the streets that were for so long full of people, full of life, and full of hope, to be completely deserted and empty, was very jarring and devastating even.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, also now, to go back a bit to the pandemic situation. I mean, I did not experience it in Lebanon, and I think that was for me. I was kind of grateful, to be honest, because I think I would have been much more triggered had I been in Beirut, because the stressors around us are really a lot. So I think we already don't feel safe. We already don't feel protected. So it's then the COVID-19 comes and heightens all these feelings. And I was very interested in how different communities deal with the situation, even in terms of behavior. I'm super obsessed with behavior in general in relation to work. And so suddenly everyone has this new regulation on how to be in a society. And I actually have been working for 10 years in a hospital, on different hospitals with an NGO as a clown doctor. So for me, this whole hygiene and immune, like who's immune, who's not, how we need to deal with different kids with different immunity, and suddenly it was super weird to see all this hospital behavior everywhere in the world. Should I put the mask like this? Should I wash my hands like this? Oh, okay, 20 seconds to wash. Like it just became a super a collective behavior everywhere in the world, and it took a whole new space or understanding of how we deal with each other when we're passing on the street. Like we move and then the person waits for us, or that all these weird codes that we developed so quickly. It's like the opposite of being in the street on this rush and going and screaming and not caring if you're close. So it's went from here to here. Oh, you can't see my hands, but here to here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, as someone said, if you see a play about a prison, the idea is we all live in a prison and we are prisoners. If it's a play about the military, in a way, we are all soldiers. You see like about hospitals, or a film, we are all patients or sick, and they are doctors. And so it's a symbolic representation. And now we do have, if that's what you say, we are all in a hospital, we're all sick. The society is sick. The way of living, things don't work. That's what everybody says. But in Beirut already, I remember from my visit, it was so complicated. The services and garbage and water, electricity. Do you think it got worse since the street uprising, or is it just now more obvious? Is it what an X-ray that just shows what is wrong?
I mean, everything became exacerbated. The economic collapse was it was boiling, right? It was about to happen, and this is why people took to the streets. And I think what the pandemic did is that it just exacerbated and accelerated everything. And so, we've always had problems with water, with electricity, garbage filling the streets, pollution, etc. And what ended up happening is that all of that just kind of took on such an enormous space. Right now we get about 2 hours of electricity a day, which I'm sorry?
Around what time? Is it like a special time they tell you?
Depends. Now it depends.
Surprise. So we never know when it comes, when it goes. It basically, we're like, okay, the power is now on. Okay, we do our laundry. We turn on the water heater. We kind of try to get everything done, so that we can charge our phones, charge our laptops, all of that. So yeah, no, it just adds to the uncertainty. It adds to how much we are hyper aware of how much we're denied our basic rights, basically.
And also to say that, for example, for sure, everything accelerated since now with the pandemic and everything. But the thing is that we've been accumulating for 30 plus years a massive structure of oppression that is very obvious in some ways and less obvious in other ways, but it's been building up and building up and building up. So it's not also the first time that people go to the street. The difference this time was that different age groups, and not only in Beirut, not only people working in art and social NGOs or like, it's not only an alternative group of people going to the street and trying to convince the mass. It was really everyone from different backgrounds, and this was for me the difference this time, and this is why I had a different hope, always with a bit cautious, because I think I'm always aware of the possibility of disappointment, but it did feel different. And now it's not that everything stopped. There are initiatives. There are people camping since weeks in Sed Bisre, which is an area where there is they're trying to make a dam, which is super problematic on the ecological level, but also it will not bring water. It's just a huge deal to bring money to politicians. And people are camping there, trying to stop that from happening. They're going to different ministries. So there are things happening, of course, with less, like, smaller groups of people. So it's not easy to protest with a pandemic.
Yeah, and if I understand right, and please correct me if it's wrong, but now you can only get $100 out, or it's a limited amount you can get from the bank. So even middle-class families are struggling for money and food, and is that right?
Actually, I mean, the days when people could withdraw $100 at a time, right now, even if you have a certain amount of dollars in your bank account, I think it's necessary to say that both currencies are in this country, and so this is why a lot of people have dollars in their bank accounts. So right now, the banks are holding them hostage, and they will give you Lebanese pounds instead at a very low rate. So people are not only suffering from the hyperinflation that is happening. So it's not even just it's hyperinflation. But also we do not have access to the money that we have put in banks. Literally, our people's money is being held hostage.
Because you have the two currencies, you can always pay in Lebanese or in American dollars, everybody except those. And so you're no longer able to withdraw the dollars for family, have an emergency or to buy food, or someone gets sick. It's always a disaster situation. So how did the performing arts come in at the moment, and perhaps also at the time of the uprising, the revolution? Did you guys stop, say we cannot do, we participate, or was it part of the demonstration?
Yara,
you mean during the pandemic? But we're talking since the lockdown or since October?
Let's maybe first go to December and say October, November, December. How did you, was the theater community part of that? Or did you say we have to stop and we just everybody else?
For the first couple of months, everything was postponed. Like we were supposed to do our play in November, and we decided to postpone it. Actually, when we did it in February, it was maybe one of the first or the second play that happened in Beirut since the revolution started, because there were a lot of talking about whether or not there should be art at the moment, but I personally thought it was very important to focus on what was happening organically with everyone included, not to directly take it to a more intellectual space. So actually everything stopped in the beginning, and it was
where theaters closed, also like completely closed, like in Chile, Guillermo Calderón said they closed down, and they had the same on the street. They just closed, and was a lockdown already in December. Theaters open, or?
It wasn't like officially closed or open. I think just everyone organically made the decision to push things, to postpone things. And now with the pandemic, the theaters, I mean, it's not even really part of the conversation formally. Like there isn't a handbook that is given that says, okay, so we reopen theaters, but there's these restrictions. So each institution is kind of handling it differently. But since there's anyway very little infrastructure for theater, it's right now it's not even. I feel it's not even in the conversation whether the theaters should open or not, or art spaces should open or not. Right now, no, there is nothing actually happening. I was supposed to do my new performance in September, and now I just pushed it like months and months away.
What basically for me kind of how things developed since October is that I think for a lot of us it was very important to be in the streets and protest and be part of the revolution, and artists were of course in the streets, right? We were in the streets, and whenever you hear very catchy chants, you're like, that's probably where an artist is. So we kind of headed in that direction, and so as Yara said, it's not that the theaters closed, it's just that we all kind of everybody decided that this is not the time to put on plays. But Yara and I, and I'm sure other theater makers, performers, directors, kept rehearsing. I mean, we kept it was very difficult because we had to focus during our rehearsals, but we were always like had to put our phones away, but we were so gripped to it to see what was happening. You know, at one point we were rehearsing and people were being attacked by the police and the army in the streets, and you know, I one day I just paused and I cried. But I think for me, theater is revolutionary. Art is revolutionary, and queer theater. I mean, the play we were working on is an autobiographical play that I wrote about being queer in Beirut, and among other things, of course. And so this subject has very little in the country. And so for me, this was my way of contributing to the revolution. And I'm sure Yara, I mean, believed in it as well, because this is why this play is our baby, you know. And so when we decided to postpone it to February, and when things kind of relatively calmed down, what is normal in Lebanon, but normal life kind of came back. We performed, and then two weeks, and then maybe two other plays premiered during this window of opportunity. And then was the lockdown. Everything was closed, of course. And as Yara was saying, there's little to no infrastructure. The state does not support the arts. Everything is very much individual or group initiatives, with little to no funding. And so right now I've been talking to a lot of artists because I'm actually writing an article about how to reimagine theater in times of pandemic and economic collapse. And there is a little effort to start imagining theater taking a little bit more space. So one of the theaters opened its doors for free to whoever wants to stage a performance, and then the kind of the deal was to split the ticket, like the revenue from ticket sales. So, but now we went into another lockdown, at least till August 10th, and then we'll see if the government will prolong it. And so now everything is back to very uncertain position.
Yeah, I know Dima and most of Yara too. I mean, you were involved in the LGBTQ community, the Beirut Pride, I think in 18, and the storytelling workshop. Tell us a little bit. And also, it was very controversial, right? You were from the government or police, and there was lots of interference.
Well, so basically in 2017, I hosted the first LGBTQ plus storytelling night to take place in Lebanon. And it was during the first Beirut Pride. So, which is kind of just a small, not a small, I mean, it was an attempt at kind of a small 1 week thing where different LGBTQ plus events would take place, and then the opening event was canceled because the people received threats from extremist groups. And then the storytelling night that I hosted was the next day, and so I get to the venue, which is this big rooftop, beautiful rooftop of an art space called Station, and I told the owner of the venue, I told him nobody is going to show up, and about an hour later, 400 people were on that rooftop, and the event went on for about 4 hours. Because people kept wanting to go up and share their stories, and basically speak. We have and this is not only related to LGBTQ plus voices, but to so many other voices that are marginalized, voices that are oppressed. We are given so little opportunity to express ourselves freely. The censorship in this country is absurd and keeps getting worse and worse. They police the arts, they police what we post on social media. The level of oppression is ridiculous. So for me to stage a play where the story of a queer woman, for me this was very frightening, but also very necessary.
Yeah, it's definitely also getting worse, as Dima mentioned. Like now, it's getting to the level where if you post something on Facebook, you can be called into questioning, and even people who are in the street, and there's others who we're taking photos all the time, like really looking at us taking photos. So everything was being archived. It's I mean, there is censorship, there is oppression, but there was always a margin to speak up despite that, and somehow find the loopholes and try to say what we want. But now I feel the consequences are getting worse and worse. It's just getting really ridiculous. I don't know. It's like going back 15 years, and I don't want to sound too. I don't want to be. It's not about sounding. I don't want to be too negative. I'm trying not to be, but sometimes there are days where I'm like, okay, we're really going backwards again, and it's sad because it took really so much. I mean, as I mentioned before, there were so many attempts and people also before us and older, and now there's all age groups, but also before there were a lot of people trying to creating the premise for us to also do something, and now I feel very angry when I see that things are just being pulled back. That's my overall feeling a little bit.
Yeah. When you go back, and even the great Ethel Adnan, the great writer, poet, and painter, what she went through. She was trying to be the editor of that art magazine section, and ultimately also left. And now her scars never came back. She's in her late 80s. Such a great world perspective artist. It was not possible for her even at that time, and that you all have to go through this again. So the wrong Facebook post can get you into jail. You can get you into trouble, interrogations, or
Very active people, yeah, people who are super active, very vocal about their opinions, have been called into questioning and interrogation. And especially a few months ago, like starting December, things became quite aggressive in the revolution. Like December, January, there was a lot of police brutality and a lot of interrogation. So a lot of people would be pulled from the street and beaten, and a lot of activists were called over Facebook posts, over over being vocal, saying what you sorry, what is actually very like the level of corruption that exists uh, doesn't shy away. It's insane. Like how can you actually call people for saying the truth that is so obvious? Then yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think thinking of this, we've and you might know this because you visited Beirut, and you've spoken to Sahar Asaf, and I'm sure other theater makers, Frank. But every script that will be performed on stage has to be submitted to General Security, to the Censorship Bureau, for them to inspect it and approve or not for it to be staged. And so anything that pertains to religion, politics, and sex is heavily censored, which, right? I mean, there's little, what else is worth talking about, one might argue. Right? We want to attack political structures, religious structures, the patriarchy, homophobia, etc. Especially when you're a theater maker or an artist that engages in political theater, in engaged art. Then it becomes very limited and very frustrating and very actually sometimes dangerous to stage a play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And part of that is also because I mean our history has not been resolved because as Dima mentioned, we still have the same people who were part of the war, warlords now in power, and we have had these people since the war ended, officially ended, let's say, or formally ended. So the we don't have all the Civil War in history books. We don't study that, for example, in schools because it's too sensitive. It's a sensitive topic, and it's so relative. Like each person, depending on how they lived the war or where they were during the war, has a different take on what happened. So the coping mechanism is let's not talk about it, but it's all the time there in every single thing. The names of the people that we see on the news are like all like just representing the war constantly on a daily basis. This we have to take, but oh no, it's too sensitive to talk about this topic or about religions and sects and patriarchy. And yeah, but you look and it's like our parliament is a poster of that, you know. So it's very schizophrenic.
Kidnapping of a president who said no, he was just on vacation, and so it is just incredible to see. So, how do you deal with it, Dima? What you say you're working on the article and how to do theater, which is for me it's not easy to imagine even. So what do you think? What do the artists you talk? What do they say? How to do theater? How to react to this pandemic? In the situation, is there any recipe?
Well, I've heard, I spoke to at least 8 artists over the past few weeks, and everybody is taking turns being very pessimistic and feeling hopeless to some days feeling, you know, oh, okay, let's be productive today. Let's apply for this grant. Let's write another page of our script. And then some days, you know, a theater director who's in her 50s, who has witnessed the Civil War and who has been, you know, in the theater for at least 25 years, said that she said, I'll retire. I don't see the space for theater right now. People are starving. People don't have bread on the table, and we're thinking about theater. So there are people who you know, perceive things this way, and this is their reality. And then there are other artists who say things are paused, right? Things are paused, but theater is very resilient. Art is very resilient. One artist mentioned, you know, that Shakespeare, you know, small anecdote that he read, you know, Shakespeare, when the plague happened, the theaters closed for 3 years. Shakespeare sat and wrote his sonnets, and then, you know, theater bounces back, theater transforms and adapts. I think people are asking very similar questions. Is there space for theater in times of pandemic economic collapse? If there is space for theater, and if we consider it necessary, then what will theater be saying? What will we be talking about? Right? I mean, do we address this massive elephant in the room that right outside the theater door? A few weeks ago, a man committed suicide in front of the doors of the theater in Hamra Street. He, you know, he left a note saying, "I am not blasphemous, but hunger is blasphemous." And so, what right? Theater usually responds to life, whether by being in a conversation with it, whether by opening an entire new conversation and imagining alternate universes, right? I mean, theater is infinite, but what do we do now? Do we stop? Do we continue? If we continue, what do we talk about? I spoke with a lot of artists, you know, something as basic as how much will ticket prices be? You know, how much do you charge for people who maybe can't afford, you know, the same, you know, the prices of meat have skyrocketed. So for people who are buying meat, you know, to cook, you tell them, no, but please pay this amount to attend a play, right? Are we, for audiences, a priority? Will we stage funny comedy because people need to laugh, or will that be too frivolous, right? All of these are being discussed. All of these questions brought to the surface.
I mean, I think also when you are in a, of course, there's the pandemic, right, everywhere in the world. So everyone is asking how to do theater and art in the pandemic, but it's more about like sustainability and the form and the aesthetic and the when and the how and yeah, but the layer here is that people are also hungry and we don't have an infrastructure. So there is no. There is not this safety where, okay, so the basics are there, basic needs, basic rights are there, so we can take a pause and look and contemplate and think. And so it's very tied to the economy, I think, more than the pandemic. It's my opinion. I mean, I don't, when it comes to Lebanon specifically, because then I think art is essential. I don't think it's. I think it's absolutely necessary, but the problem is when people are being put in a position where they have to prioritize eating or maybe even eating out once because they want to eat out in a restaurant where there are other people and or going to a theater, then maybe they're going to go to the restaurant, because it's less consuming also, and it's easier, and it's less mind consuming and emotionally consuming. And so this is the problem here, that I think we're in a position where we have to pick our priorities, and we don't have the release of saying, okay, it's okay, I work from home, I get paid, everything's fine for a few months, and I take this moment to reimagine things. And but that's the practical, harsh side of reality. But I do agree that theater is infinite and resilient, and we have been through, I don't know if we have been through worse, but we definitely have been through a lot. So there was theater, there was art. It never really stopped, even during the war. People changed the shape, changed the way, but they found a way. So.
Yes, definitely. This is something a lot of us think, and Yara as well, for this article I'm writing, and so many of us said that we never had much. Right, we never worked with a lot. We never worked with massive budgets. We never worked with a lot of resources. Every theater for so long has been very DIY. I have a few $100s. What can I do? If we can't afford to rent a space, then some people performed in other people's apartments. Suddenly we're all minimalist theater makers with like a very very minimalist scenography and set, and so we've always been pretty badass at making theater from very little. And so a lot of theater makers and artists that I've interviewed and spoken with, I think so too, is that we have been doing this for so long. A lot of people are saying we're not afraid. Theater is going to come back. It's just we have to reimagine the shape it's coming back in.
Tell us a bit. Are there ideas for reimagining?
Yes. Various ones. I asked the artists the question, even if it might not be applicable, how do you imagine it? And Sahar Asaf said that in Madrid she once experienced teatro micro, so like very short plays happening at the same time in different rooms, and you kind of it was, I think, €5 to attend the play, and that can be that, or you can pay another $5 and attend another short play. And it was 2 to 3 actors with very basic set. So I can see that happening. Somebody else said that we're going to have to find other spaces, right? We don't have $500 to rent a theater for a night. And so does this mean that we will host each other in our apartments? Will we be taking over little art gallery spaces or public spaces? Yara, when you shared your kind of imagine scenario, I thought it's beautiful. If you want to talk about it a little bit.
Actually, at the moment, even though I'm working on something that is very intimate with the audience in a closed space, but I feel that the need right now is to be in an open space for the people, and to maybe work by the seaside. We have a beautiful sea in Beirut that is super polluted, so we can't swim in it. So at least maybe we can be there together in an open space. And I felt it's beautiful to go back into sort of promenade in the city, just to be out with people around others and feel safe, because I guess in a public space we might feel safer right now than being and less cold. It's less cold than sitting one chair yes, one chair no, one chair yes, one chair no. It's weird to have these chair structures. It's sad, and I feel being out maybe is beautiful and a bit more hopeful, and makes us feel a bit more connected to the city again.
Yeah, absolutely. We do not have public spaces. We have parks, and a big part of the revolution was to take back public spaces, and I think one way of doing that, like Yara said, is through art. Right? We will assert our presence in public spaces by performing there, by performing theater, or since it exists, this communal experience to experience something. And so right now social distancing is much easier if you're in a huge space, and you don't have to worry about the chair that's next to you, in a smaller theater. So and then other artists talked about radio plays. The Zukak Theater Company, which has also been hosted, their play Heavens was streamed on HowlRound actually not too long ago. They said maybe one of the platforms is radio plays. Another way of stimulating the imagination. We'll sit in our own living rooms, maybe invite a friend or two. That's what I did. I invited a glass of wine and we listened. And so maybe that's also another.
Yeah, so people can host in their home by screening of something.
Actually, it's interesting because as I was talking and listening, I thought that we really maybe need to go back to basics. Yes, community. It's like a collective experience and somewhere outside in a collective space. But also, radio plays is something that was very common in the 80s, in the late 80s, during the war as well. There was this format, and yeah, maybe it's a good time to bring it back, whether or not things go worse politically. It's a beautiful format, I think, in all cases.
How, if I may ask, how did you both get into theater? What was the moment in your life, and why do you do it? Talk about what happened that you.
Frank, do you mind repeating what you said? It kind of echoed, and I didn't.
We hear echo from you. Maybe you have a live stream on. That sometimes happens, but most probably it's the connection. How did you get into theater? How did that happen? And what does it mean to you? What does theater mean to you?
Yara?
I don't know when it happened specifically. That's what I knew all my life. That's what I wanted to do. Of course, the what changed with the years, like how I imagined theater would be or the work would be. But I knew from a very young age that this is what I want to do. And I grew up also in a family of artists, and I'm at a place in my life where I say I cannot decontextualize that. Of course, it affected how I viewed things. Of course, it introduced me to that world very, very early on. I mean, in relation to the radio plays, like my parents both did that during the 80s when my father came back to Lebanon from France, actually. And my mother used to translate texts, and they would do them on the radio. And he was touring in the war, basically. So I've been in theaters since I can remember, and but for me, in my own journey has been very different, and I cherish those differences, and I love also that I have those references with my family. I what it means to me. I mean, I don't know. I think it's whether I'm on stage or I'm writing or I'm directing or I'm in a thinking process for a new play or I'm collaborating, and I love to collaborate. I love to work with people. For me, it's an experience. It's a chance to discover others and discover yourself and say what you feel is necessary to say politically, and yeah, that's. I didn't expect that question.
It's an easy one.
Hmm?
It's never an easy one to answer.
No, because there's a lot to say, you know. Like then I can talk for like an hour now.
For me, I'm the youngest of 4 children, and always that I was, you know, my parents were like, okay, we're done, and so my kind of, and so I would stage these little performances at home as a way of just getting attention. And so I feel like that is part of it. But I feel the dangers of, you know, one narrative is that it's never one. But a very important reason why I'm a writer and a performer is because I grew up around stories. My father actually, you know, at every lunch, you know, we'd finish lunch and still stay at the table for hours after that, having coffee and dessert, and he would just tell us stories about the Civil War, stories about his childhood. My dad is now 90 years old, and so he has a lot of stories. And so I grew up with that. I grew up knowing the importance of stories and storytelling, the magic that a story contains, and how it brings people together. And this is one of the reasons I founded Cliffhangers in 2014, because stories do things that very little else can do. And so, and I think theater, the kind of the core of theater is storytelling. And so for me, they're inseparable. And so, as a writer and storyteller, one with bringing stories to life. So for me, it was a combination that made, and I can't see it any other.
Yeah, and so one of you is leaving the group, or one of you is staying. That's what the question: artists are facing.
I mean, I'm not leaving per se. For me, I think that now there's a new chapter for a while, and I'm there. You know, I don't think about leaving and staying as a. I always think about the decisions like that as a temporary thing. For me, at least, I think about the moment and now what's happening. Okay, I follow that flow, but for sure I'll be coming and going back because I have a lot of projects here as well if they find the time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely a weird time to be leaving temporarily. Things. I feel like I'm leaving to Australia and I'm going to Zurich, you know, and Paris, and I feel like I'm going somewhere super far because of the situation, the economic situation, also not just the traveling due to the pandemic, but buying tickets, buying a ticket to go to Zurich, or you know.
I heard your answer, but that prompted the answer. could repeat it.
Question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Question. So are you planning to stay in Beirut? Are you continuing your work, or do you theater artists will the big city and go outside other places? Yesterday we had Kelly from Asia, and she said she's part of a movement. We said you have to move out of the bigger centers, like art or small spaces, smaller production centers. Do you still think this is in Beirut? Or do you go to Europe? Or I know you have been also with Sundance and Fulbright.
I'm gonna put my headphones on. I think maybe that way I can hear you better. So just give me a second.
But it's also cutting. It's cutting a lot.
Yara, your experience with that too.
I might have answered another question completely, actually, because now I'm hearing that.
Also, internet is slowing down in Beirut.
Yeah.
You know, it was fine in the beginning, and it goes through through stages, and people might start, since they have electricity, watching films and Netflix. Is that popular?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is, you know, this is why it is so complicated. Most people do not do it, and that's why we hear so little, because it is complicated. You know, how do you really hear what you have to say if there's only 2 hours of electricity? There are very few journalists, international journalists left in Beirut. So what we hear from you is of importance and significance. And so, yeah, Dima, so the question is, how is it for you? Are you going to stay there? Are you say also, I'm going to make a pause for 1 year and focus on something else, right? Are you stay? Are you continue to work? What is your plan?
That is the question, right? I mean, I am staying. If you had asked me this question before February, I would have had a different answer. You know, I'm a teacher, and I host monthly storytelling nights. I'm also a playwright and a performer, and I feel like I was doing so much. We're all aware that Beirut is not an ideal city to be in. People have been leaving and immigrating and just giving up on the country for decades. All of my friends have already left. You know, and Yara is one of my dearest friends, and you know, it's also, you know, and also my director, and it's also another a loss for me, and even though it's a temporary one, and I'll be seeing her a lot, and I'm sure we'll keep collaborating, but there was a lot to stay for. There's a lot to fight for, and you know, whenever I needed a breather or a break, you know, just in the past year, I went to London, New York, I went to Sundance, I gave a talk in another city, etc. So it's good to take a break from Beirut. We all need that. But now that we were stripped of everything, right? I think we're all so sad. My friends and I talk about how we cry at least once a day. But I'm here for now because my parents are here. And so I maybe wish I had a more grand answer that I want to fight more. I want to help resurrect you know, something in this country, but actually no, I'm here because of my parents, but I know that I'll keep writing. I'm still writing. I'm working on my second play. Actually, I'm writing that, and when the theaters open, we'll find a way to make theater. But I don't know if I love this this country anymore. Yeah.
So, and the economic situation for theater artists. So you say artists basically starving, artists, who's taking care of them? How is it? How is it?
That's a good question. The thing is, a lot of artists are not only artists. They're teachers. They have other jobs, and so several of them have another way to financially sustain themselves. Some people, that's all they do. You know, Yara being one of them, the professional theater makers, etc. And so there are some emergency funds that some companies and some individuals applied for, but there is absolutely no state support at all. And so anything that is helping these artists sustain themselves is purely coming out of personal initiative and personal effort and personal, just that basically. Actually, funnily enough, I was interviewing one of the members and founders of Zukak theater company, and he said, you know, that the government for a while suggested that they would give a small amount of money to small businesses to kind of support them and help them not close or go bankrupt. And he said, what if we tell them that theater, you know, is a small business? I wonder if they'll give us some money.
It's actually a thing, you know. It's actually a job.
Of course, it is, and a lot of theater makers and artists, when I interviewed them, they expressed their fear of people not wanting to pay artists, right? Of the theater to go back to how it was decades ago when people didn't make money of it. You know, they did it because they loved it, but it was amateur theater because people would not pay, you know, we couldn't afford to pay actors, couldn't afford to pay directors, etc. And so a lot of artists are afraid for theater to go back to this amateur, way of theater that where they will not make a living out of it, basically. And that's a very significant fear.
Yeah. And it has such a long tradition, theater in the Middle East. So many who do say, no, it's not true. You know, the work, which also we are covering, Marvin Carlson is covering, our Arab Stages Journal, our publications. It's a very long history and a significant one. And it is heartbreaking to hear what you all say and how endangered it is and what complicated situation. Is almost like a siege, a military siege on a city, and it's about survival. What keeps you inspired? What are you guys? Are you reading something or listening, or are you watching? How do you keep your motor warm, as someone said with us here? You know, how does that? Rita said that from Indonesia, from the Paper Moon Company. You know, said it's important. But so what do you do? What do you read? What do you listen to? What do you watch?
That's a excellent question. There are some days when I just binge watch anything that comes up on Netflix. Those are very real days. But artwork that sustains me, I recently finished reading Carmen Maria Machado's memoir in the Dream House, and it's about a queer abusive relationship. And so it's very much related to the play I'm writing now. And so I'm reading a lot about that. I'm also, one of the things that sustain me is actually seeing my parents 6 feet away with a mask on, but going to visit them and ask them to tell me more stories. My father actually suffers from cognitive impairment, and so he forgets a lot of the stories. And so I'm writing a lot of essays about memory and inherited memories and what it means to have a father who is 90 years old, who is a wealth of stories, but is slowly losing them. And so So a lot of what sustains me is actually going to see my parents and tell me stories. Always tell me stories. As long as there are stories, we're around, we're talking to each other, we are a community. And for me, that sustains me. And Arabic indie rap.
Oh, yeah.
True.
What are the musicians? What are those? What are the bands?
Well, my very favorite an artist I've been listening to nonstop is Synaptic, a Palestinian Jordanian rapper. And what I love about Arabic indie rap is that it's angry, it's engaged, it's coming out of a need to speak, and which is, you know, what us as writers and theater makers also feel. And so, you know, I'm doing my dishes and I'm like, yeah, you know, like getting all excited and just doing the dishes. And, you know, this is also what sustains us. Other people who share our frustration, our anger at our views at what is going on in the world and in this region.
Definitely. I think music is, I wouldn't imagine a life without music, and angry music also. And it's, it's necessary. I mean, I've been listening to a lot of Afro funk music and also rap. I not a Synaptic, but Tafar also is a really cool rapper. And Brel, I always love to listen to Jacques Brel. He makes me sad and happy and everything at the same time. And movement sustains me. I need to move. I need to train. I work out a lot as a form of meditation. It's what keeps me a bit balanced. It makes my head very calm. I've been working also on my text, on my new performance, because I've had such an urgent need to do it now. And I had to deal with the fact that, okay, I need to push it for a certain amount of time. So I've been revisiting the text and working on it. Speaking of families, I'm also working on video archives from the 80s and the 90s of me and my family in the house, where we were just constantly filmed doing nothing. So I'm working on the archive, so it's a lot of family as well, which is nice but complicated. And yeah, I've been reading a novel by Alice Zeniter, who's an Algerian French writer, called L'Art de Perdre, and Roland Barthes as well, Fragment d'un discours amoureux. And I've been reading Octavia Butler actually as research for a performance I'm working on with Neumarkt. So it's like a book for a different part of the day. Yeah, I also like series, but I haven't had patience recently for series somehow. I'm too jumpy to focus on series somehow. Yeah.
And it's one of the things that, you know, if you want to look at some form of silver lining for what we are going through, is that suddenly works of art, plays, artists that we would not have had access to are now accessible to us, right? Everything is being streamed. Theaters in various cities are streaming their performances and digging things up from the archives and making it available for free online. And so, yes, everything sucks, but we've had more access to art than before in this country, and I'm sure people in different parts of the world are feeling the same. So, yeah, it's beautiful.
The change. We're coming too close. Before maybe we ask what you tell our audience, what to think about. What theater inspires you? What theater makers do you look up to? Because you, as you say, you in Europe or the US, people go to theaters and festivals and have access to it. Perhaps not as much travels to Lebanon. But what theater makers really inspire you? Who do you
Yara, would you?
I always feel I have a blank mind when I'm asked that question. It's like asking me, "What is your favorite book or your movie?" Or I follow. Uh, I follow. I don't know. I can't think of a name right now. It feels like another life somehow. But I can say that I love theater that challenges me and that gives me new realms to discover. I don't like to see the same things being produced out of it doesn't inspire me when I feel it's the same topics and the same, even though sometimes the topics are pressing and then they're like echoing everywhere. But I also feel super happy and inspired and curious like a child when I'm surprised by new topics and risks. And yeah, I can say this as a state of being. It inspires me. But honestly, I don't know. Sorry, I just had a blank of I couldn't now have a reference somehow. Maybe it will come.
For me, I mean, I feel the same way Yara does, that it's so hard to pinpoint. But right now, I'm thinking a lot about Amal Rafael Khouri. They're a trans-Jordanian German playwright based in Berlin, and they wrote the first play in Beirut or in Lebanon about queer and trans stories and characters. And so I consider her and them, they use various pronouns, kind of the fairy god human of the kind of theater that I also make. And so I consider them a very important figure to be inspired from. And I also am thinking about Theater Me Too, based in New York. I'm sure you're familiar with them. I've had the pleasure of working with them, of getting to know them, spending time with them, both in Beirut, NYU, Abu Dhabi, and in their space in New York. And I was actually supposed to be there working with Ruben and the company in April for kind of a reimagining of my play. And so, of course, that is postponed to who knows when. But I you know, similarly to what Yara said, I love theater that takes risk, that experiments, that you know, people sitting together and thinking, if we had no limits, what can we create? What do we want to say? And how can we use everything that is around us to say it? And so I'm a huge fan of their work. I'm a huge fan of them individually and as a group. And so yeah, I miss experiencing their work and experiencing working with them.
Yeah. To mention them, I mean a lot to them. And so we're getting closer to the end. We're a little bit over time, a little bit more, but this is really important to hear from you. So what do you say, you who have this economic catastrophe, limited electricity, not the access to food as you would need, theaters closed, no support. What do you think? What do you say to young artists, maybe also the one who are a bit like me, we are more privileged, our listeners, what should we use this time for? What should be the time of Corona? What is the meaning, or what meaning can we create from it? What should we do in this time? What is of importance?
I don't know where to begin to answer that, but you know, something very, you know, that I can think of right now is that you know, what I said earlier about theater being infinite, art being infinite. Art is healing, but art is also revolutionary. Revolutions have been started because of books, and so we must be doing something right. We're important, and in times when we feel so small, when we feel so helpless, I think it's revolutionary, but it's also a way of survival to know that we are important and the work we do is important, even if we're not making it right now in this moment because of all the obstacles. We will go back to making it. And art is always relevant, and not only relevant but essential to the way we experience life. And I would never want to live in a world without it. And so it's just a reminder that what we do is essential.
The internet was cutting a lot, but if I understood right, it's also, I mean, what to say to other people maybe who are a bit more privileged in that sense, this word echoed a lot for me, and I feel it's very important, if anything positive comes out of this pandemic that is happening everywhere, is to be aware always of the privilege and the different privileges, because there's a lot, and to be aware and understand. I feel this has been very present right now on social media. Every people questioning their privilege, and I think we need more of that, and not just speaking about solidarity as a utopic, sexy topic, but actually about actual solidarity and educating ourselves always towards the other, and truly, and trying to understand the art of other people and their background, and maybe questioning again our references, and who do we always take as reference and why? And I feel it's a good time to question everything. I feel that, and that doesn't mean we need to stop or pause or not do art, because art for me is a process of constant questioning. That's what we always should do. Of course, we should be sure and we should have confidence but we should always have a bit of doubt. I find that for me beautiful, to actually be in a state of questioning. That is the ultimate collective play of the world now, because everyone is in the process of asking questions. So,
Yeah, no, that's significant. And also the privilege of being privileged, right? The privilege of being able to question your privilege is already such a privilege.
Of course. Of course, education is a privilege. Doing what I love is a privilege. There are different aspects of it.
Yeah, or we had this Jean-Luc Nancy, that French philosopher, who said when he was here was about life and art and life. He said, of course, we now think about the value of life, but now we have to think what is the value of life. Right? We all know, but now we have faced such questions even more. And that's something artists always have done, and that's why it is important to really hear from you and to get that message from Beirut as a the temperature of this moment, and who knows how it will be in a couple of months or half a year. And so it is significant what you had to say, and thank you for the update. You are part of the world theater community, of a global community. What you do is important. The storytelling, your plays, about your experiencing of growing up and your identities and collaborations with European theater, so that there is something that all connects us, and it is really heartbreaking to hear how difficult it is that Dima says, I'm not sure I love my country, and everything becomes so existentially difficult next to the COVID, and perhaps the economic situation is even more complicated. And it's just one of many things. It's truly my heart to you and everybody, all of your colleagues. I want to thank Adam Ashraf El-Saji, who is a student also at the PhD program with us, who helped us to make this happen. So thank you, Adam. And I think it was really important that we heard from you. Please do stay in contact. Let us know what perhaps the New York theater community can do, to support. What do you think? What would be of real help?
I think it's, for me, it's too soon to tell. I think, especially that, I mean, New York is struggling, you know, and we should never compare struggles, right? Roxane Gay, right, said it's not the oppression Olympics, but right now the struggles happening in the United States are very real. And I think, you know, when I listen to other talks, when I experience art that is done by people from other countries, this sustains me. And I can only hope that our work does the same for others.
It really, really does. It gives us, you know, comfort, and also that we are not alone in this, and that we care, deeply, deeply care. I really, really thank you for joining us. Tomorrow we have Richard Schachner back with us, who what I've worked in theater, director, as an educator, editor, and researcher. You will join us again. He's preparing a special issue for TDR, his great theater magazine. Journal, and also to, you know, try to make sense out of it, or create some additional meaning. We're going to take a break in August. We will see how it develops, where we go from here. So really, thank you for joining us, and all my best, and stay safe. Also, our audience, stay safe. Wear a mask. Stay tuned. Thanks to you really for listening. So many have listened in, also to colleagues and artists from around the world. It's very meaningful for them to know that people do listen, do care, and also know that you guys listen to others. So this is quite a significant, you know, that the little sense of community, especially also in the US, that tends to be isolated. After all, it's also an island, just a very, very big one, but it's an island. And
well, thank you so much for hosting us. It's been very important and significant to have this conversation. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Say hi to Sahar if you see her, and everybody at her theater company. So hope you will be able to join in tomorrow. Thanks again to Hal Round for Thea and BJ for hosting us, and the Segal team. Andy, Sanyang, and you guys are now, it's dinner time. You all said you learned to cook again, or even more so. I hope you will have a good Lebanese food. So all my best, and who knows, one day you might all be swim in the ocean in Beirut. So I hope.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of the day.
Bye.